Welcome back to Out Loud with Steve and Mal. Today in our cornered celebrity guest spot, we've got Peter Cox. He's an English singer-songwriter, best known in the States as the lead singer of Go West. He has released 9 solo albums. He is now releasing his 10th called Sea Glass. Let's welcome Peter Cox to the show. Peter, it's great to see you again.
Thank you, guys. How you doing?
Doing
Well.
really well. Now, I talked about Go West and your solo work. So before we bring Melissa on, tell me the difference between working with Richard Drummie and then you going out on your own. That has to be somewhat difficult, or maybe it's not.
Well, it's, the awkward truth is there's a certain freedom to it because now I don't have to run every decision by Richard. We don't have to agree on every single detail of a song because if I'm collaborating with Richard, it's not a situation where I write the words and he writes the music. We both are involved and opinionated on each aspect, and that leads to a certain amount of headbanging. So for better or worse, when I'm writing songs for myself, particularly in this most recent instance, I've written 9 of the 10 songs on the album on my own. So yeah, I've been saying in interviews, it's all my fault.
There's no one to blame. What was the inspiration behind this album for you?
Well, the motivation for it certainly was lockdown. I know that's a common story, but here in the UK, in the March of the year of the first lockdown, we had a roasting few weeks. And if you were lucky enough to have a little bit of outside space, as we do, I sat in the garden drinking wine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for day after day after day, until thinking this could be worse. Until I started thinking, and of course I was seeing many other artists, more accomplished, one man, one woman bands recording themselves performing in their living rooms, whatever. Right. And that's not something I'm capable of doing, but I did think, everyone else is keeping themselves occupied. They're making an effort to make the best of these circumstances. So that led me to fool around in my own little studio here with a cover of Donna Missel's song Jupiter, which she wrote with Sharon Van Etten. That was the first song. Yeah, I love the quirkiness of it. I've taken a few liberties with the chord progression, but my version, my humble version of it is not dramatically different from hers, except of course that it's in a different key. And so that was the first song I recorded or started to record, and then I started writing, and one thing led to another slowly over the next 2 years, and here we are.
Sure. So how did you end up naming it Sea Glass? I thought that was a rather unique name to call the album.
It's funny, when I'm looking at a song title, for example, when I'm working on a song, one of the first things I do is to see how many other songs are there that have this title. And I did the same thing with the album title, actually, and there have been predecessors. But my friend who did the album artwork, who did the artwork for my previous 2 independent solo releases, lives on the coast, and she every morning she goes down to the beach and she takes what I think are beautiful pictures of the beach and the sea and the sky and so on and so on. And she collects pieces of sea glass. And if our viewers, listeners are not familiar with that term, sea glass is what happens when pieces of broken glass get washed and smoothed by the tide and the sands and so on. And it struck me when I was seeing her lovely images on Instagram that there was a certain similarity between the length of time it takes me to write a song and knock it into some kind of shape. So that's how the album title came about.
That's funny. That's actually, I wouldn't have thought of that. As an American, I had never heard that term before. So I wasn't really sure, even when I Googled it, what could it possibly be? So that's really interesting.
It's much more widely. There's a beach here in the northeast of England, which is a famous spot for sea glass, which I didn't know about either. But there are lots of people who collect this stuff because it is actually they can be quite beautiful.
So with that in mind, just the idea of the water kind of smoothing our edges, our hard edges, You know, we've all been in this industry a very long time, and probably our hard edges are gone. Would you say that's kind of what happened to you as well, where you started with Go West and where you are now? Certainly, I would think the edges are not as sharp as they used to be.
Well, I hope I'm a little bit more comfortable in my skin.
Sure.
I don't know if I had particularly any hard edges. Perhaps we shouldn't get into the
I did.
psychology of this question.
I did.
Oh.
I had way too many hard edges. You know, even with this show, you're talking about relationship, which is kind of the basis of Out Loud. Even Mal and I, we will just go round and round and round.
Oh, we do. We do go round and round. We
I'm
argue
always right. I'm always right.
No. I'm always right. I'm the woman here. Come on, be fair. So, Peter, obviously, kind of just talking then of kind of at the beginning for you, looking back, what advice would you give to the younger Peter when you were in Go West to what you know now? Is that obviously you've been on an amazing journey. Is there any advice for new artists that are out there that you just wish, oh, if somebody had said that to me at the beginning, I might have done things a little bit different?
There are several questions in that one question there. Yeah. Okay. Advice for myself. Get on with it. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Right.
Don't take yourself too seriously. I think that would all
good advice.
I would have been better off had I realized those things earlier.
Oh, true.
But as far as new artists now, younger artists, I've been asked on occasion to address classes and so on, which I've always declined to do because I hardly think I'm qualified. And plus, I'm also aware that if I were honest, my main advice would be make sure that you are doing what you're doing because you love to do it. Because if you're doing it in the hope of being famous or getting rich, you are more than likely going to be disappointed. That's the sad truth of it. And in these days when, as we know, the musical landscape has changed so dramatically, and again, I'm hardly qualified to say, but I do feel for artists who are trying to get going, trying to make themselves, get themselves any kind of profile, because while technology allows people to make records in their bedrooms, in their homes, in their living rooms, many people do that and make fantastic records as well. But the ability that people have now to get their stuff onto the internet means that there's so much stuff out there and it's so difficult to get noticed. So unless you, in addition to having a musical talent and having the songwriting skills, you also now have to have the skill to make social media content for 6 hours a day, which is, for me, it's just a non-starter. That's never going to happen. So it's tough out there. It's, in a way, in different ways, it's even tougher now than it ever has been, I think.
Yeah.
Now, let me flip that question here. Let me step in on there, Mal. Would the younger Peter Cox like this version of Peter Cox? Like, if they listen, if you back in Go West put this album on, would you be like, this is pretty good? Or would you go like, dude, what are you doing? I doubt you ever said dude. I mean, I did. And
you wouldn't have said dude, Steve.
I lived in California for 6 years. I still say dude.
There we go.
So if there's shame in that, I'm guilty. I'm guilty.
That's why you and I are bro.
Let me down, Peter. Let me down.
Old habits, I guess. If you're asking if I'd like what I'm doing musically, then I mean, I can only write the songs and make the songs that come from me naturally. So I hope that I would then say, yes, I like what you're doing. I mean, you did say, dude, what are you doing? And I have said that to myself on many occasions in the process of making this album, because, on a good day, I'll sit and think, yeah, I've written some songs. I'm the fact that I've even written 9 songs, for me, that's some achievement. And on a good day, I'll listen to the album and think, you know what, this is all right. I'm quite proud of this song. But on a bad day, I will say exactly that. Dude, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? Because I'm what they laughingly refer to these days as a heritage artist. So, but again, you know, thinking about it just in this moment, in this conversation, I realized that I am doing what I'm doing because I love to do it. That is my motivation. And it is unrealistic to think I'm going to be #1 in the charts or even necessarily make a profit with the album. But yeah, I guess, as I said, COVID was the initial motivation, sitting around suddenly feeling uncomfortable about doing absolutely nothing. And once I got on a roll, the process of making a record remotely, and again, I know I'm not on my own having done that. Lots of people exchanged musical files on the internet, and that's how the first 2/3 of my album was made, until we could finally then get in the studio and record in the way we might have done, you know, 30 years ago.
So, Peter, how important are these charts like Heritage to you now? Obviously, from the days of Top of the Pops, going back to the 80s, and obviously that competitiveness, you know, obviously you're doing this independently now as well. Obviously, not having that kind of power of like a massive major behind you. How different is that for you? Does it mean more now when you get into those charts?
Well, in the sense that, you know, I think for artists in general, both young and old, the industry has become so much more DIY than it ever was.
Yeah.
If you're young, you can make your own records, as I was saying earlier. But now, going out on a tour, as I am in a few weeks' time, I am acutely aware of every financial decision that has to be made.
Absolutely.
Because the budget is mine. And regarding the Heritage Chart, Mike Reed, who has started and runs the Heritage Chart, is providing a platform for people like myself and other artists of a certain age, if you will, who can't get any exposure any other way. And another nice thing about the Heritage Chart is that if you have any kind of social media following, and everyone's trying, even if it's not 300,000, 1 million people, everyone's trying to, you know, reach out to those people who are interested or might be interested in what they're doing, and those people can vote for your song. If in my case, my fans can vote for my song on the chart and hopefully propel it up. So it's another way of engaging your fan base, making them feel a part of your journey, and they can actually impact the chart on your behalf. So yeah, I mean, it's all good, and like lots of other Heritage Chart contenders, I'm very grateful that Mike's come up with this idea.
Absolutely. It's a great shop window, isn't it, with the way how hard it is to kind of get into network charts now, and how saturated, like you said. I think they said the other day that Spotify released 60,000 tracks a week. So to try and get into that, it's just chaos, really. So you've got to work it. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely, as far as Spotify is concerned, on my part, I sort of made the gesture, the meaningless gesture of boycotting it for a while. But in the end, what are you going to do? You know, the service itself makes brilliant sense, because, you know, more or less all the music that was ever recorded for whatever it is, 10 or 11 pounds a month, it's a no-brainer. Of course it is. But that the content creators and the songwriters don't get paid, and that's from my point of view, I'm bound to say that's a problem. Anyway, moving on.
Absolutely. No, total agreement, completely. How are you feeling about your tour coming up? Because you're on tour in May, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm excited and I'm anxious. You know, the same familiar mix of feelings. You know, I hold myself to a high standard. I want the gigs to be good. The band and the singers are gonna be great. But there's no question that 3 gigs back to back 90-minute shows is going to be a test. Yeah, I mean, my voice is working. I don't have quite the range that I had 30 years ago, as I'm finding when I come to start familiarizing myself with my old material. There's a key change here and there, but hopefully it's going to be listenable. Fingers crossed. And yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to playing songs from the new album, because even though my fan base is small, the reaction to the new songs has been really positive. And going back to what we were talking about, making a record, dude, what are you doing? You know, when I'm writing the songs, but obviously, like any other creator, until you let it go out there and get a reaction, there's no real way to know how people are going to react to it. You just have to be as true to yourself as you can. And the fact that they've been positive has been, you know, it's bolstered my confidence a bit.
Yeah.
Now, if you go ahead.
Sorry. No, I noticed that you're working with Gary Stevenson again from your previous albums. How has that been for you? Obviously, because again, obviously not with Richard and doing your own thing, and that must have been quite a big difference in that kind of environment working.
Well, it's one less voice to argue the point, that's for sure. But no, I mean, Gary is one of my dearest and oldest friends. You know, I have known Gary for forever, and you know, as we get older, it starts to feel like forever. But when I was in my little studio and we couldn't be together, the fact that he and I have such an understanding after working together so many times over the years, it's a shortcut. It's a familiar language. So I can communicate with Gary and say, you know, that thing we did on this, we need something similar here, and so on and so on. So yeah, from that point of view, it worked brilliantly. And Gary is very kind to me financially. So although everyone who's involved in the album has been paid, it's often been mates rates. I couldn't have done it any other way, you know. So, and the fact that at the tail end of the process, Gary would send me the mix in progress and I would listen to the mix and say, can I have a little more, can we do this, can we do that, so on and so on. And we submitted one set of mixes to the label and we got a test pressing back, which was fine. Right. And then Gary called me and said, I think we can do better. So he remixed everything again. And, you know, it's that engagement and that passion about the project. And who knows how many people will hear it. But yeah, I'm of course, I'm very grateful that he cares so deeply about it.
That's the hard thing, I think, with a mix, because it's like, where do you stop it? I think somebody was saying to me in the studio recently, it's like it gets abandoned at some point because you just can't push it anymore, and everyone's hearing different things at different times. So
that's right, exactly. This reminds me of that expression, you know, how many people does it take to paint a picture? Two. Absolutely. The artist to paint it and the guy to shoot him when it's finished. Yeah. I think it's a truism of recording as well, certainly in my world, in Gary's world, that if you had 20 years to make an album, you'd still need another day.
Right. Absolutely. It's always that one more push. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And if you put in a lyric or an album, dude, what are you doing? I need a little bit of credit.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Okay.
Stop it, Melissa. I need my credit. I need my credit.
Every week you try and get in on everyone that comes on here, Peter. He tries to negotiate. It's either he's in the back on the backing vocals or he wants to cut on the album. Just watch him. Just watch him. That's all I can say.
Just one. Come on. You know, we can go back to California. We can grow our mullets. We can bring that all back, can't we?
If I could grow a mullet, I would, Steve, I tell you.
Say, you know, we could put like plug mullets in the back, one of those hats, you know, with the mullet with that. I know, Peter, you and I could do that. Plus, you were in Chicago for a little bit, were you not? Isn't that what you
I was, yes.
So that would have been a great time for us to connect, you know, because I was in the same places with you. I could have been in Ghost Steve. How about that, Mal? A Ghost Steve band.
That's good. No? Do I take it that Peter didn't kind of connect with you in Chicago? I wonder why. I wonder. Was it the kazoo band? Yeah, it was the kazoo band. I know.
Oh my God, that is just too funny. You know, you were talking about the bands, and I thought of the Ringo Starr All-Star Band. Okay, great idea. Why don't you tell me, who would you put in your All-Star Band? Like, who do you think of? That I know that's kind of it's a tough question, but who might you do? Who would you pick?
Wow. Well, all right. This is a fantasy idea, so I'm not even gonna. I'm not even going to think in terms of which musician would work with which other musician. Yeah,
I don't want that.
The guitarist that I'm listening to at the moment is a guy called Jared James Nichols. You guys have heard of him at all?
I believe I have.
Yeah,
I'll be honest,
he's breaking out.
Right.
He has he's a blues rock player.
Exactly.
Looks like a mountain man, waist length hair. Just a fantastic guitar player. Drums. Who would I have on drums? Vinnie Colaiuta, probably. Vinnie Colaiuta and Jared James Nichols in the same band.
Wow.
That's a brainstorm to start with. Yeah. I don't know. Is it alive or dead, or does it matter?
Doesn't
Am I
matter.
taking this
We can bring
question
them
too
back from the dead for
seriously?
you, Peter. It's fine. We can do anything on this show. Anything.
Okay, well, let's have Jaco Pastorius on bass then.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a mad. This is a mad
Wow,
It's a
band.
that
live
is a
band.
man. That is crazy.
Yeah. And maybe we'll have Jeff Beck on guitar as well. Now I'm
Oh,
getting going.
Wow. I'm
And
just watching Steve salivating because he wants to be in this band.
ooh.
Ooh.
Keyboards. Well, Michael McDonald. There you go.
Of course.
Then Michael can take the lead vocals, and I can play tambourine. It'll be great.
Oh, no. You got to give yourself more credit. You know, besides the women
Yeah.
screaming for you constantly, even when you did that cover we spoke of last time, the cover of the Doobie Brothers song with Michael McDonald. That was a great cover.
Thank you.
And when you work with I'm drawing a blank. Spandau Ballet. Tony. You
Tony
did
Hadley.
Yes.
some stuff with Tony Hadley. I love that stuff. I mean, even where your vocals are between the two of you. So I thought maybe you throw Tony in there for a background vocals. He might be upset.
Thank you.
So
I think it would be very difficult to get Tony to be background anything, quite frankly.
very true.
Yes. Standing next to him, as I imagine I said to you the last time we spoke about this, he is a loud singer, man. He's a loud singer. I was talking about this earlier, thinking that I really must reach out to Tony, and because he's been kind to say that he's heard a couple of things from my new album, wishing me well. And I need to say to him, listen, if you need an opening act, I'm ready to go.
That would be a great tour.
That would be good.
That would be Tony and Peter on tour. I would fly to London to go see that. I would.
Bless you.
It's worth doing the show to get Steve back on the rock in London. There you go, Steve. You got your invite.
That's right. But the flag, the whole works. You know, I did promise when I step back, I call it the Rock. Okay. It's an island. It's compared to the States.
Gotcha.
That when I come in, I'm going to stomp through Heathrow. So then everybody knows it's me. So when they say things like, are you an American? Like, what else do I have to do to say that I'm an American?
Dude.
Right. Bro. Dude.
Yeah.
It's the best thing to say. Dude, like, where's my car? Dude, what are you doing? I just think that's the way it should be. Stop. I'll stop. Come on now. That's how this works around here.
So Peter, I love that lyric, obviously in your Go West track. I know we're going back to the beginning, but everyone holds one desire. Okay, something that resonates with me. I kind of do songwriting and kind of have been in Heritage too, and the Heritage charts at Christmas with Mike Reed with a track. And
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. But I just, for me, obviously, it's kind of, there's always desires as an artist and things you want to do. Where you are in your life now, is there a desire? Is there something you still haven't fulfilled that you think, oh, I'm going to do that one day. I will get that chance to do that with music. Is there something that is still an aspiration or a dream for you after all the wonderful things you've achieved on this journey?
I don't know. I said in an interview, a written interview, that I wanted one day to be able to play a convincing guitar solo. But that was such an uninteresting answer that the magazine edited it out of the interview. So, okay, so I know that's no good.
Yeah.
So I know that's no good. I was just looking today at the nominations for the best song musically and lyrically this year. The Ivors, I think it's called in the UK. And had to listen to each one. It's all part of working, you know, being aware of what other people are doing. And so while I don't know if it qualifies, but it would be nice to write something that was respected and thought of as positively as that. So so I guess that's just, you know, keep writing, keep working, keep trying to do the best you can, and hopefully you'll write something good.
What about outside the industry? Is there something like you want to, I don't know, climb a mountain? Is there something like that you'd like to do? Like go hang gliding, something like that, or skydiving with me.
Really.
But you and me, we jump out of a plane.
I'm not a risk taker, Steve. I'm not, you know, I never was a skier, for example. And when people say, would you like to go skiing? I say, not really. No, I'm not, you know, plus my suspension's kind of gone, so I'm not a runner either. You know, the knees aren't what they're not 19 years old anymore. I think I probably said this to you, Steve, the last time we spoke. Again, as a fantasy that's never going to happen, I would love to announce a basketball game, because I got the bug really badly and had it passionately when I was living in Chicago, actually. And of course, as you'll know, Steve, because of the time differences across the country, on a Sunday, you can watch 4 games back to back.
Right.
So I was in heaven. I loved it. Yeah. And I loved the way that each team has a traveling announcer.
Yes.
It was Chick Hearn, is that right? For the
Chick
Lakers
Hearn.
some years ago now.
Chick
Yeah,
Hearn.
yeah. So, and I loved the fact that you would hear those same announcers wherever your team was playing in the country. So that would have been a bit of a dream job, flying around the US with a team being their announcer. I know it's mad, but there you go.
I might be able to pull that off, though. You know, I've got some content. I do. That would be kind of cool to listen to that. And in exchange, I have to do like Formula One. I don't know how you get a Formula One job. That would be kind of that'd be
cool.
So that'd be good.
Yeah.
I got one question left. Don't want to, although we could probably talk for like 3 hours. So the essence of Out Loud is about relationships. You and Richard have been together longer than most marriages. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the secret to your success, or at least of the relationship that you guys continue? I mean, you're going out with Go West this summer. So obviously something has worked over the years.
Yeah, I think obviously the relationship was formed just as a friendship with commonality of music and sense of humor, and the films that we would shared at the time. That was one of the things we used to, watch films together, and yeah, just commonality in that way. And when we were younger, Richard would introduce me to music I hadn't heard before. Todd Rundgren is, he's well known to be a huge Todd Rundgren fan, and that definitely comes out in his songwriting. So that has had an impact on me as well. Then, like, other relationships ebb and flow. By the time we were living in California together, early 90s, I'm thinking, no, 94, making what would become our Indian Summer album. We lived in a house together, which I think if Richard were here now, with the benefit of hindsight, would say that might not have been the best idea, because with love and respect, you can have too much of a good thing.
Oh yes.
And I think when I came to California and made my solo album, I felt the need, at least, to have some space, because we had been first close friends, hanging out together. We started writing. Then when we had some success, we were recording, we were making videos, we're traveling, having fantastic experiences, but living in each other's pockets for a long, long time. And in actual fact, when we were doing the radio promo tour, which led to The King of Wishful Thinking, finally, as our first US hit single, on that trip, we had to share a hotel room, which at the age we were at by then, mid-30s, was not the most fun. But you do what you need to do, really. But yeah, so how has it lasted this long? Well, obviously the band and the work keeps us together. I was answering a question earlier about the difference between traveling and touring on my own, and why do I still go out with Go West? Well, of course, now looking at it from a business standpoint, we have a small track record, a small catalog, where, so if an agent is trying to put Go West into a venue, he'll call the venue and he'll say, Go West, this band. They have had these singles. They've had this hit single. They had a song on the soundtrack of Pretty Woman. And most cases, fingers crossed, that gig will happen. Whereas an individual, I'm an unknown. No one knows me except for my diehard fans. So, and of course, as we know, I've touched on it earlier, there is no selling records anymore. There's streaming, the actual record sales and the ability to make money from those sales has pretty much disappeared. So if you want to make a living playing music, you have to go out and play live. And fortunately, along with a catalogue of songs that we can play. There's a great line from Spinal Tap, a cozy 10 minutes. Well, we have a cozy half an hour or so, but we can play those songs,
Yes.
and people will know who we are, and we can deliver them in a recognizable way. So short of it is, if I want to continue making solo albums, I need to earn a living with Go West in order to pay for the less successful stuff. What did Michael Caine say? Sometimes you have to make to maintain a high standard of living, you have to make a very low standard of movie.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that about Go West. I love playing those songs. I co-wrote those songs, you know.
Right.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Right. And always turn it up to 11. We needed to, it must be
Yes.
higher than 10 because it's 11. So
Exactly right.
it is great to have you back. And if I may, I would like to have you back during the tour. So we'll have you, and even if Richard's there, have you just call the show, you know, from the venue, because the plan here with the Out Loud is to head out to London. So you may see me out on what I'm calling the Rock. So
Okay.
stop in. And I don't care what Mal says, somehow, some way, I'm going to be in the band.
We're just kind of warn all of the TV and media stations that you're going to be touching down soon at Heathrow. Gosh.
Peter, always a pleasure. Where can everyone see everything that's going on in Peter Cox's world? What are the social media sites?
Oh my goodness.
Is it just petercox.com? Is it
it's Peter John Cox on Twitter, official Peter Cox on Facebook and Instagram, I think. TikTok is a step too far for me. I'm not ready for that.
No one's ready for that. No one is ready for that. Unless we're 18 and have nothing to do and living off our parents. So
easy, Tiger.
Yeah, I guess I could move back home. I'm sure my parents would like me to come back. So Peter, always a pleasure. Great to see you again. And we will see you on tour. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dude.
More Out Loud coming up.
Thanks, Mel.
Stay tuned.
Thanks.